All right. Welcome to another episode of the Cassels Cast. My name's Eamon Cassels. Joining me today is going to be Noah Weber for a Mavericks season preview. Without any further ado, let's just get into the episode. All right, joining the show now for a Dallas Mavericks season preview is Noah Weber. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Mavericks definitely had a busy offseason in terms of roster turnover, but the first thing I do want to talk about is the new front office and coaching staff because this is officially turning over a new era for them. Not only did they hire Masai Ujiri, but then they brought in Dusty May, which was a big surprise. So initial impressions of both those moves and then just the overall organizational vision for the Mavericks right now.
Yeah, so I definitely think the Masai hire, that was probably one of the best hires they could possibly make when it comes to the head of basketball operations. I mean, you know how he's awesome. Just his time with the Toronto Raptors, I don't think it gets the credit it deserves. He ended up with one ring there, but I think that he did a spectacular job there, especially when it comes to his emphasis on front court players. So he did a great job. That was an awesome hire. And then they brought in Mike Schmitz as the GM, so they're going to work in tandem, which should work out really well. And the Dusty May hire was just a home run in my opinion. I mean, his rise through college basketball was really fast, but that happened for a reason. I mean, if you, every season he was just going up and up and up, took Michigan all the way to the national championship, and now he has a job where he's working with a bunch of young guys. And John Poulikias, I got to talk with him out at Summer League, and he was just talking about how much he really likes the college environment that Dusty brings. So I think that he's going to be a great fit for a team that's more future based. And I think that they did an excellent job when it comes to the overhaul. Masai was always going to bring in his guys. He has his guys in there now, and I think that they've built a nice core, a good foundation to their basketball ops department.
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. When you look at Masai, he was definitely the most accomplished lead executive available. I mean, you look at his experience building a championship team with the Raptors, it kind of speaks for itself. I do think those last few years with the Raptors didn't go great, but overall, still think that was a great hire, obviously. And then Mike Smith is also a good shout. Longtime draft express guy, so that's cool to see him earning that GM title, but also generally seems to be alignment there in terms of like how much they value versatility and front court size. And then I think Dusty May really fits into that nicely. When you look at that Michigan team, it was specifically built around an elite front court. So I think that all makes a lot of sense. The Dusty May piece of it all was definitely unexpected. At least for me, I feel like that kind of came out of nowhere. There was some rumblings, or maybe it was going to be John Shire or something like that. But I wasn't totally expecting Dusty May to make the jump from the NBA right after winning a national championship. But his collegiate experience speaks for itself, and I think he's going to be a great hire. It is crazy, like you said, dating back a few years ago, he was at FAU, makes that Final Four run, earns the Michigan job, quickly establishes himself as one of the best college basketball coaches, and now he's in the NBA. It's a pretty crazy story, but yeah, overall, how much do you think like the word? I know alignment's kind of a cliche GM buzzword, but how much do you think that will translate just based on like the emphasis on like front court size and versatility? How important for this team is that going to be?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important because, like I said earlier, with Masai, historically, he he knows the front court guys the best. Like in conversations I've had with him and where we've dove into that a little bit, like he can better evaluate front court players, those big versatile wings, better than he can say a point guard. And look, Dallas drafted Morris Johnson Jr. there with that ninth pick. I mean, a super versatile big, play the four, the five. I mean, I think that that's super important because you want everyone aligned. Because when you look at the Luka Doncic trade, I think that Jason Kidd probably knew about it, but I don't know if maybe he was fully aligned with Nico Harrison there. Of course, he might have not vetoed it, but I think there were multiple moves there towards the end of Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison's time in Dallas where they might not have been fully aligned. For example, the Christian Wood trade or the D'Angelo Russell signing. It's extremely important to have a head coach and a front office that is fully aligned. And I think that that's one thing that they're going to emphasize this time around because if you look at how poorly things went last time, the front office and the coaching staff weren't fully aligned. It didn't end very well. I mean, they were a finals team that ended up not even making the playoffs the next year and trading a generational superstar. So I think that that's very important, and I think that that's something that this new era Mavericks team is going to be pretty keen on.
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. Even for more of that outsider's perspective, I think that Luca trade press conference rather just sort of rings in everyone's head where Nico's talking about it and you can just sort of see based off of a kid's body language that he's like, yeah, what are we doing here? I'm not totally on board with this. So I think that's huge. And then also firing Kid, I think that does make a lot of sense. Not that he was a bad coach by any means, but in terms of just like getting Masai's guy in there, and clearly that was Dusty May. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's just huge for the organization going forward. You touched on Merez Johnson earlier, so I definitely want to focus a bit on these rookies, especially as the Mavericks are still generally a younger team. With Merez Johnson and then Sergio De La Rey, what do you expect from both those rookies? And were those the picks that you were kind of hoping for, or were you a little bit surprised by either one of them?
So I was honestly surprised by the Morris Johnson Jr. pick. I figured that they would be maybe targeting some of those Michigan guys after the Dusty May signing, but I wasn't sure that Rez would be a guy that they would take at 9. I figured if they were going to maybe trade back with a team like OKC or Charlotte, maybe he was a trade back target. But from what I've kind of heard, I think Rez was going to go pretty quickly after 9 if Dallas didn't take him. I kind of expected Braden Burries with all of the buzz that had been going there before the draft, especially with just everything that I'd heard is that his camp was pushing for him to become a Maverick. I'm not sure how much that love was replicated from Dallas's end just because of how much radio silence there was from Dallas this offseason. I mean, no one's really talking. It's not like not everyone has the same sources they once did with the organization. So no one knew what Dallas was going to do. Not even Dusty May knew what Dallas was going to do, from what I understand. Masai texted Dusty right before the pick went through, and Dusty didn't even see the text till after the fact. So, I mean, I think Morris Johnson Jr., I think he's a guy that's going to be obviously be in the rotation right away. Dallas has a lot of front court depth, so it's going to be interesting to see where he slots in. But if you're going to use a top 10 pick on a guy, he needs to be a key piece of the rotation, especially since your best player is a 19-year-old superstar. So I think Morris Johnson Jr. is going to play a lot. I think that there are going to be lineups where he plays the 4, maybe with a guy like Aldama, but I also think there's lineups where he's going to play the 5 because he has that physicality. He can switch everything. He's extremely strong, catches lobs. I think he's going to be a nice fit next to the bigs that they already have. And one thing that's important, I feel like, and it really helps the point guards is, of course, you need some sort of versatility. Like Aldama gives them a floor spacing guy, but Lively the second and Gafford are both rim rollers who can catch lobs. Having another guy like that on the team is just going to make things easier on Kyrie Irving, Sergio De La Rey. So I think Morris Johnson Jr. is just going to be a fun key piece of that young core. I think he is just a surefire, like he is going to be a high level starter one day. That might not mean he's going to be a star, but he's going to be someone who brings it every single night and impact winning at a high level. And those are the same things that Cooper Flagg does. And then with Sergio De La Rey, Dallas desperately needed another guy who can handle the ball, play make, operate out of the pick and roll. And while his handle looked a little bit loose at Summer League and he might not be the most athletic, he's an elite passer. He might already be, along with, say, like Kyrie Irving. And I think Cooper Flagg's an excellent passer. He's a better passer than he gets credit for. Sergio's going to be one of the best passers on the team on day one. And I think he has a chance to secure that backup point guard spot just because of how good of a playmaker he is. Like he can make advanced reads at the second and third levels. He's a lead out of the pick and roll, and he's an excellent lob passer. So that should make him a good fit with Dallas's bigs.
Yeah, most definitely. I think most people sort of pegged Dallas to take a guard at 9, and that does make sense just positionally. But I really liked the Johnson pick. He was definitely one of my favorite prospects in the draft throughout the process. I think just his motor and versatility stand out so much to me. I've talked about him a lot of this show because I do a lot of draft stuff. But yeah, I really loved him at Michigan, and I think he's really a perfect fit for what Masai wants to do. And then obviously the Dusty May connection is there. So I think that did make a lot of sense despite like the guard need, and then picking up De La Rey at the end of the first round does fill that void to some extent. So I thought it was a really nice draft for them. I do have really high expectations for Johnson, and I really like your point about just like versatility in the front court, how really a lot of these different players, whether it be Aldama, who they also brought in, Risacher, who we can talk about in a little bit, PJ Washington, Flagg, Lively, Gafford, they all just kind of give you something a little bit different. And I think Johnson fits into that, and he knows how to play with other front court players, which I think is going to be a real benefit. You'd like to see him develop a little bit more as a shooter, but in terms of just like an efficient play finisher, especially inside, who can attack mismatches or just catch lobs, I think he has a really ready-made skill set in that department. And then defensively, I think he has a strong case to be the best defensive player in this entire class. And when you look at this Mavericks team who might want to build a defensive identity around Cooper Flagg, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I just think Johnson was going to be pretty awesome wherever he went. So I like that fit for the Mavs, and I think that's a really nice pairing with Cooper. And then De La Rey is an interesting guy, international guy, obviously. And he wasn't a guy that I definitely watched more of the college prospects, but I was able to tap into his film a little bit and then watch him in the summer league. And just that like guard with plus positional size, and then he does have that like pass dribble shoot skill set. I think that's going to be big for this Mavericks team. I didn't know if he was like a lead guard or more of that like combo guard win type of guy, but for this Mavericks team, it definitely looks like he is going to be playing that lead guard role, which should be interesting to see. Like you said earlier, like his handle didn't look super tight in summer league. He doesn't have great bursts, but in terms of a guy that can just read the game at a really high level, uh, create for himself a little bit, I think he's going to fit in nicely and get some real minutes on this Mavericks team, because you look at the guard depth, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but outside of Kyrie Irving, it's a little bit slim. It's like him and Marcus Sasser as the true backup guards. So I think he's going to have a real role with this team as well. I think we can move ahead to another big move, unless you have any more thoughts on the rookies, and that would be the Risacher trade, trading away Ryan Nemhard, who did have some real minutes for this team, and then some second round picks to get the 2024 number one pick in Zach Risacher. And I know he had a bit of a down season, but I thought it was a nice buy low. What were your thoughts on the Risacher pickup?
Yeah, so I thought that was an excellent move. I mean, you bought really low on him, and that's exactly, I mean, what you want to do. That's I feel like moves that Mike Schmitz and Masai want to make. Like they want to take these chances on these guys who might not have had these big chances elsewhere, but they can have big chances in Dallas. Another move they made, we might dive in this later, but is Jed Howard. Like, of course, lottery pick a couple years ago wasn't really getting minutes in Orlando. Now he's going to have the chance to potentially under standard contract in Dallas. But when it comes to the Risache trade, I think that losing Ryan Nimhard has gone a bit too under the radar. I think that Ryan he was really good for Dallas last year. Of course, he didn't look like someone who was ever going to be a long-term starter. He's just too he's not tall enough. I mean, if you're that short, you have to be the most skilled player on the court, and you have to be really elite at a skill that's not passing, in my opinion, to be like an elite lead guard. Like if he had a little bit more burst, or if he was like a really strong scorer and he was more assertive on the offensive end, then maybe there could be a vision where okay, he can be their starting point guard one day. But I didn't see that. I saw him being a good backup though. I mean, he started nearly 30 games last year. Like that's not nothing. Like he had a really solid first season in the NBA, and he led rookies in assists per game. So I mean, there's something there. Atlanta gets a good guard there. Who knows how much he'll actually play? But there's a reason he went from undrafted to a two-way to a standard deal. Like there's 100% a reason for that, and I don't think losing Ryan Nimhart should go undermined just because of how good he is. He's a great teammate, great floor general. All the guys loved playing with him. Cooper loved playing with him. They had great chemistry. He makes the game easier for everyone else. But with Risache, this is a deal that I would probably do 10 times out of 10. Like you said, he was just the number one overall pick 2 seasons ago. And his time with Atlanta, Quinn Snyder obviously didn't trust him. I mean, he was pretty much out of the rotation by the end of it. He went from an every game starter as a rookie to a starter every game to begin his second year to his role just slowly went down. He then lost that starting role. And then by the end of it, he was getting some DMP CDs. I mean, that's not what you want if you want to develop. And I think that Zach, he just wanted a chance to play. Like, and that's exactly what he's going to get in Dallas. I don't think Dallas is going to be a contender by any means, and that's perfectly fine because I think Masai and Mike Schmitz are going to take a pretty patient approach to this. Not to say that they're going to tank because they don't own their first round pick this next coming year, but it does mean where hey, you can be patient with these guys. Max Christie, Risache, Cooper Flagg, Lively the second, Morez Johnson, Musa Cisse. Like these are all guys that need to be playing heavy minutes. And I think that Risache is going to have a real role in Dallas. Like they didn't this wasn't Dallas hopping in as a third team to help initiate or to help facilitate the Lou Dort trade. This was Dallas targeting Risacher, and Atlanta happened to like Dort, and they were able to make a three-team trade work. Dallas was the initiators of this trade, and I think that Risacher is going to be a solid fit, especially if he can hone in on really being like a knockdown shooter. Like he's been a good shooter through his first couple of years in the NBA. I think kind of more average, but if he can be like a knockdown 40% three-point shooter while guarding elite wings on the other end, I think that he's going to have a role. Like I wrote a piece about this the other day. Like his number one role in Dallas should be, I want to be a part of Dallas's young core. Like cement yourself as someone who Dallas can't give up on. And I think that that's what his goal should be. And I think that if he can pull that off, that's a successful year for him after what he's been through with the Hawks.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the point about Nemhard to start off there is a good one, especially because we'll talk about it more. But again, the guard room just isn't deep. And he established himself, if anything else, as an NBA player. Maybe not a central part of a championship rotation, but an NBA player, a quality backup guard, someone who earned minutes on a team that just didn't have really any true guards last season. So I do think it is a bit of a loss. But when you're looking at buying low on a number one pick, I think yeah, you part ways with Ryan Nemhard, even though that might be a bit tough. But yeah, Risacher, I think he's one of the more interesting players in the league, honestly. Just like the story with him is so interesting because obviously he was the number one pick, but beyond that, like it's not like he's been a total bust through 2 years. He was literally the rookie of the year runner up, and then he obviously fell out of favor with the Hawks. Like you said, he didn't earn Quinn Snyder's trust, but at the same time, I do think there has been a lot of signs that he's at least a quality rotational player. Do I think he's going to be a star, live up to the number one pick expectations? Yeah, probably not at this point. I was never a super big fan of him in the draft, but I always thought he could be a solid contributor for a team, and I think that's the opportunity he has now with Dallas. I think so much to your point hinges on just him developing as a shooter. He had a pretty down season last year in the shooting department, but the sell with him was he's a guy at 6'9", 6'10", great positional size who can just really shoot the ball at a high level. So I feel like that's the number one thing for him is just getting back to that shooting consistency a little bit more. And then who knows? I just don't envision him as like much of a creator, but who knows? He's still young. Maybe he could develop in that department. And then defensively, from what I saw with the Hawks, he did show real promise. He has great size. He can fit into that defensive culture. So yeah, I think he's going to have a real nice bounce back season. I don't know if he's going to take a massive statistical leap, but I think we're going to look back at this time next year and say Risacher carved himself out a role. He's clearly an NBA rotation player. Again, probably not a star, probably not the guy you'd like for your number one pick, but can he be like a Keegan Murray type of player where he gets quality minutes and he fits alongside star players? I definitely think he could be, and I do think he's a nice fit next to Cooper Flagg. And then, as we talked about earlier, this front office is clearly put in forward play at a premium. They're loaded with forwards, which on the surface could make it tough for Brise, but I would have to assume that, and like you said, they're probably going to commit to developing players and finding players who are long term fits next to Flagg. And considering how long they were linked to Risacher, I think, yeah, it definitely makes sense for him to have a sizable role, and I think he's going to rise to the occasion for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And if you look like their old front office was linked to Risacher, and then now their new front office was linked to Risacher. Like they obviously there was people within the organization that really liked him. And so like you said, I think that they're going to commit to developing a little bit and like what would make this trade a home run is him like growing into a starter. Like he is a starter for a championship team. Like he can be the worst starter, but like just him being a starter would be a absolute home run for Dallas here.
Absolutely. And I definitely think that's in the cards for him, just based on the fact that he kind of has like a low maintenance skill set. I think like 3 and D gets thrown around a lot, but he is like that classic 3 and D mold where he can spot up in the corners. Maybe he can give you a little bit more of finishing and inside scoring, but it's really just spot up shooting and defense. And I think, I think that's a fairly easy role to carve out given the ample opportunity, which I think Dallas can do. The other move I want to talk about, we briefly mentioned it, but the Santi Aldama trade, what do you envision him bringing to this Mavericks team, and how do you envision him fitting into this loaded front court?
Yeah, so I was actually writing about Aldama right before we hopped on here. So I think that Dallas has needed a floor spacing big man for so long. For so long. They had Maxi Kleba who could play that 4-5, but he had real problems staying on the court. Like he was incredible when he was on the court. He was underappreciated. He could really knock down open shots. He could protect the rim. He could switch on defense. Like Maxey was an unsung hero for his entire Mavericks tenure. Of course, injuries have really caught up to him. He might not even stick in Los Angeles now. He could be out of the league before we know it. But Maxey had a slept-on career with the Mavericks, and I think that Aldama could be potentially even better than Kleba was in Dallas. They've just needed someone for so long who can step outside and knock down open shots and not just be a rim rolling big. Like they have Lively the second, who is a rim rolling big. They have Daniel Gafford, who is a rim rolling big. They now have Morez Johnson Jr., who is a rim rolling big. They needed something different that just opened the floor up for Cooper Flagg. Like always having a big man in the dunker spot clogged things up so much for Flagg during his rookie season. Like, of course, he was a better finisher than anyone could have imagined. But like, imagine if they could run some 5-out stuff, like when PJ Washington was starting at the 5 for a couple games there in Dallas. Like the game was so much easier for Cooper. Like you have to have good shooters around your non-shooting superstar in order to make things easier for him. I do think that Cooper's jumper will eventually get better, but for now, I think it's fair to say that he's a non-shooter, just given that he shot, I believe, under 30% from three there as a rookie. So they needed something. That's one of the first things that Masai said. I asked him during his intro press conference. I said, like, what kind of players do you want to surround Cooper Flagg with? And one of the things that he immediately mentioned is more shooting. Like that was an obvious need for Dallas. They didn't take enough threes, they didn't make enough threes, and they didn't make enough threes their rate of making threes wasn't good enough either. 3-point percentage, all 3 points attempted, 3-pointers made, and 3-point percentage. Those were all in the bottom 5 of the NBA last season for Dallas, and that's unacceptable. So they really addressed shooting there. I think Aldama's shooting is going to be huge just because he's a high volume shooter. Like he's not afraid to take those shots. He can hit trail threes. He can hit threes off the catch. He's actually a lot more skilled than people give him credit for. Sometimes if he has a slower defender on him, he can take him off the bounce for a couple dribbles, maybe get to the rim. I think that was a huge pickup. It's going to be interesting to see how much he plays. I do expect for Dallas to trade Gafford before the regular season because if not, Aldama's role might be a little more shaky because you have Lively the second in front of you. You have Daniel Gafford in front of you, like potentially Morez Johnson Jr. in front of you. Like, do you really want to trade like 3 second-round picks for a player who's playing 15 minutes a game? I'm not really sure. Aldama's only 25. They need to probably open up some more minutes for him because that front court logjam is real. But I think he gives them something that they've needed for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you made a lot of good points there. Yeah, when you look at this Mavericks team, it was very clear last year that they were just short on ball handlers and short on shooters, and that those are two major flaws in the modern NBA. And we can talk about this front court identity, this leaning in towards size, versatility. I think that's all great, but you do need to have some level of shooting, and the Mavs just didn't have that last year. And especially when you're looking to surround Cooper Flagg and maximize him, we can talk about that in a little bit, but you just need more shooting. You need more ball handlers. Kyrie coming back should obviously help with both those, but I don't think that was going to be enough. So I definitely understand the value of getting that like stretch four. I think that's super valuable to the modern NBA in terms of like floor spacing and just finding guys who fit around your star player. I feel like Aldama is a little bit of like that Nas Reed prototype where he's just like an absolute bucket. He can stretch the floor, great for himself a little bit. Skilled for his size. I don't know if he's quite at like the Nas Reed level of skill, but he fits into that mold. He's a great super sub in that way. So I think it was a really nice under the radar pickup for Dallas and fills a lot of needs. You mentioned Daniel Gafford potentially being on the move. So this is one question I do have for you. And usually I like to do these season previews when the offseason is entirely complete. And I feel like the Mavs had a busy enough offseason to where there's enough to talk about. But you said you envision Gafford getting traded. And then Klay Thompson is another guy who's in a lot of trade rumors as well. So do you think the Mavericks offseason isn't yet done in that regard? And with that in mind, do you think like a Thompson move or a Gafford move would just more so be for picks than players because they do have a fairly deep team? Or yeah, how do you envision those trade markets playing out?
Yeah, so what I don't think that they're done because right now they have 16 players on standard deals. You can only have 15. So that's of course one thing that they're going to need to figure out whether that's moving on from Klay Thompson. I think that they're going to try to avoid a buyout as much as they can. as they should. I mean, he's one of the greatest shooters in NBA history. Maybe he's not worth the contract that he's on right now, but it's an expiring contract. Some team can give up something to bring in Klay Thompson, and Dallas is going to be patient with this because there is value for shooting in the NBA. Like any contender could use him because a lot of like imagine if Detroit made a move for Thompson last season before the trade deadline, or another one of those teams that needed 3-point shooting in the playoffs. Like there is value for players like that because every team needs knockdown shooting. And with Daniel Gafford, he's been shopped by three different front offices now. Like he was shopped by the Nico Harrison led front office. He was shopped by the Michael Finley and Matt Riccardi led front office, and now he's being shopped by Masai Ujiri and Mike Schmitz. Like I think that the contract extension he signed when he signed it last offseason, I think that there was still a sense that he could be on the move just because the amount that he signed for, excuse me, it barely missed a 6 months trade restriction. So I think Gafford has been expendable for some time now. He's been in trade rumors for multiple seasons. He was a key piece in their run to the NBA Finals there in 2024, but I just don't see him being on the team much longer, especially after they drafted Morris Johnson Jr.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And to your point, I feel like both players are valuable to contending teams, depending on their needs. I feel like Thompson's a guy like the Heat have been linked to him a lot, and that makes a lot of sense because it's like, hey, can you guys get some perimeter players, some shooting? That might be nice. And same with the Lakers. I feel like I mean, he went to Dallas to play with Luca. I think that was a big factor, but I think he's a guy that can always fit in with that like Luca style of player and just playing off of great players still. I think that's a strength of his. And it's not going to be an amazing return by any means, but you can get some sort of draft capital or maybe like take a flyer on a younger player, whatever the case may be. So I do see there being value in like just purely trading him instead of buying him out. I definitely think that makes sense. And the reporting also indicates that they're not going to buy him out. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And then Gafford, I'm a big fan of Daniel Gafford as that like rim runner, rim protector. I don't think he's like a high end starting center, but he can be a starting center on a really good team, or worst case, I do think he's an elite backup center. I've always enjoyed those rim runner prototypes. I understand now with Morez Johnson and Lively's coming back, and then you match the offer sheet for Musa Cisse, who you have to have some sort of hope for, and he showed a lot of promise last year. Aldama's in the fold now, so I understand why he would be expendable in that regard, and I definitely think potentially moving off of him and then getting some sort of young assets back, whether that be draft picks or like a flyer and a young player. Same sort of deal there. I can see that being valuable for Dallas. Before we get into Kyrie's return, which I think is going to be like maybe their biggest outright addition, I just want to talk about some more under the radar moves that we did briefly touch on. But any big thoughts in the Jet Howard edition, and then retaining Musa Cisse, who had some nice moments for the team.
Yeah, not too many big thoughts on the Jett Howard pickup. I think that that's just a flyer on a guy who was underappreciated, didn't have much of a role. I think that we'll see what happens there. I think that he has a ton of potential as a shooter, but he maybe hasn't necessarily shown that in the NBA. I think that his numbers haven't been as strong as they could be, so definitely need to see more out of him if he wants to stick and earn a standard deal. And with Musa Cisse, I think that retaining him was an essential move for the offseason just because he played harder than anyone last year. There wasn't very much to play for, of course. Dallas was tanking by the end of the season, but Musa played so hard. Another just elite rim roller, freak athlete, rim protector, runs the floor so hard. He's so fast. That was a great pickup just to keep him. I think he's a great character guy. And yeah, I think that we'll see what kind of role that he has, but he is a great, like, third string center.
Yeah,
Oh,
most definitely. I think that Jet Howard move is, buying low on somebody who was a lottery pick and has that shooting and size potential. We'll see. I don't anticipate him carving out a big role, but I think it's worth mentioning at least. And then Cisse, I think, was, yeah, like you said, pretty essential to match that offer sheet from New York. He really stood out in some of those Mavericks games where it was just like, Cooper, and I mean there wasn't a whole lot going on, but he really always just jumped off the screen in every game. Like you said, plays with great energy, and then he's that rim roller type of guy who, like I said, I've always had an affinity for those types of centers. I feel like it's so nice to have like a low maintenance center who just does all the dirty work. He can rebound, block shots, give you a ton of energy, catch lobs. I feel like those types of centers are a little bit underappreciated, but they're super impactful to win in basketball. And for the money that it wasn't like a Grizzlies Quentin Post situation where it was like a big multi-year deal or anything. I thought it was kind of a no-brainer for Dallas to match it, and they quickly did. So I think that makes a lot of sense bringing him back, and I think the roster will probably determine somewhat of his role, but he did at least show signs that he can be a quality backup for Dallas last season. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Perhaps like the biggest addition, even though he was on the roster last year, obviously sidelined with that ACL injury, is Kyrie though. So yeah, what do you envision in terms of like Kyrie's impact coming off that ACL injury with his age, and just how much easier will he make Cooper Flagg's life?
Yeah, so they definitely took that patient approach when it came to Kyrie. Like I think he could have came back last year if they had something to play for, but they obviously didn't. And I think that he's going to make Cooper Flagg's life so much easier. Like having an elite guard who has gravity on and off the ball for Cooper Flagg is just going to be so nice because all eyes were on Cooper Flagg last year. Like, sure, Anthony Davis maybe played 20 games, but without Davis, all eyes were on Cooper Flagg all season long, and he was commanding the other team's best defenders, whether that's the Thompson twins or Jaden McDaniels or whoever that may have been. He was getting a lot of times the other team's best defensive assignment every single night, and he was still averaging 20 plus points a game and winning rookie of the year and a 50 plus point game. Like Cooper had an incredible season, and just having another elite playmaker to play alongside with him is going to make his life so much easier. Kyrie is going to make everyone's life so much easier. I think that his return has kind of been slept on, and I think that he should have an incredible bounce back season. And if he can stay healthy, I expect him maybe not the same player that he once was, but let's not act like Kyrie is 36 years old. Like he still's got something left in the tank.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely have high hopes for Kyrie, and he was definitely a guy before the LaMelo trade happened that I was pushing for the Timberwolves to trade for. Obviously, the Mavericks didn't want to give him up, and I think that makes a lot of sense from their perspective. And yeah, for this team, I think he's just gonna help them so much. Again, we've touched on it a few times, but they were just so devoid of ball handlers last season, and Kyrie is maybe the best ball handler of all time. And he's still incredibly skilled. I just feel like his game will age gracefully despite the injury concerns. He's just an elite three-level scorer, incredibly skilled, and like pound for pound, you could argue like the most skilled player ever. So I feel like games like that always translate, and he can play on or off the ball. I don't have any major concerns. Like maybe he's not going to be the clear cut like top 20 player that he was a few years ago, but I still think he's going to be incredibly impactful, especially for this Mavericks team that just, like we said again, like just doesn't have a ton of ball handling. I think he's going to be a game changer. And then, especially for Cooper, I think that's going to be a big difference maker. I couldn't be more impressed with Cooper Flagg's rookie season, given the roster context. I feel like we always knew that he had this level of play to reach. We saw it at Duke. He was obviously an incredible high school recruit and everything, but the context of Dallas's roster last year was rough, and he still managed to consistently produce. People could like poke holes in some of the efficiency or whatever. Like, I don't really care. Like, he had no spacing around him, no ball handling around him, no real like dependable shot creation around him, and he still thrived. And he won Rookie of the Year. I thought that was the right call. He was their entire offense, and then defensively, I thought he was really solid as well. So I just think having, like you said, like a guy that can take the pressure off of him a little bit is going to be an absolute game changer, and we're going to see Cooper reach another level. So yeah, with that in mind, do you have any like specific areas of improvement you'd like to see from Flagg, and what are your like overall expectations for him this year?
Yeah, so his jump shot certainly needs to improve with him shooting below 30 from three last year. And I think Kyrie Irving return will really help him with that. I would say that's the number one thing, honestly. I think everything else he was pretty good at. I mean, his finishing was better than anyone could have thought. And his defense off the ball, he's just such a menace and he can really sit down and guard guys in space too. So I would say overall, the one thing that I would think Cooper needs to improve on and that I think he will improve on would be his 3 point shooting.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. I mean, we saw it in flashes in some of those big games, but over the totality of the season, he just wasn't a very productive shooter. And I think part of that was just again, the context around him wasn't ideal in any ways, but also like at Duke, like he wasn't an incredibly consistent shooter. So I do feel like that's the next level for him to reach. But I do think he's more than capable of it. He's just such an exceptional all around talent. Maybe he's not going to be like a 40% shooter, but if you can get him into that like 36%, 35% range, I think he'll be in a really nice spot, especially because he can just contribute so much all around. I mean, his ball handling, his size, his playmaking, defensive versatility, I mean, it's all there. I was super impressed with just how he was able to command the offense. Obviously, there were some growing pains when he was playing that like point guard role a lot of the time, but for someone of his size and who is truly a win a forward in that like Jason Tatum mold, I was incredibly impressed with what he was able to do in that guard role. So yeah, I think he's gonna have an incredible season. Uh, Two more questions about Cooper. The first being like, what level do you think he can reach? And what level do you sort of like envision him being at? When we're talking about him next season. Like for me, I would say he's like a top 25 or so player. I don't know if you'd agree with that just based on that rookie season, but what level do you think he could reach in his second year? And then do you think we are going to continue to see like him used in that point guard role a little bit still despite Kyrie's return and then like players like De La Rhea and Sasser? Do you feel like there is some openness to experimenting with him as a point guard, or do you think we're going to see him revert to what was considered his natural position in that forward role?
Yeah, so with Cooper, I think that maybe the Mavericks not going to get more guard help could be a little hint. Hey, we want Cooper running more point guard. I mean, everything should have Cooper Flagg's development at the front of their mind. Like that should be the number one thing is what can we do to make Cooper better? And I think that's putting him in maybe some positions that might be uncomfortable. That's kind of what Jason Kidd focused on, and I think that maybe it didn't look as pretty, but I think it did teach him something about how to handle the ball late in games and how to handle pressure. And I think all of those things were super productive for his rookie season. So I think Dallas's lack of guards is naturally going to make Flagg be the team's main playmaker, especially when Kyrie Irving is off the court. So I think we'll see a lot of that. And I'm not sure, honestly, how much I think De La Rhea and Sasser will run the show. I think that I see De La Rhea being ahead of in the rotation than Sasser at this point. We'll see. We'll see how that pans out. But I think that De La Rhea is like a first round pick for Dallas, and I certainly see De La Rhea having a bigger role than Sasser.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I would be curious to see a little bit more of Flag in that point guard role. I don't think that's going to be like his full time role, but I feel like if you look at like Scotty Barnes and the Raptors, he does handle a lot of he does have a lot of ball handling responsibility and playmaking responsibility, and I do view that as like a comp for him in some ways, especially just with his size and playmaking. I feel like it is really off the charts, especially for his age. It's super impressive. So I'm definitely intrigued by that aspect of it. And yeah, I mean, Sasser, I feel like he could have a role with this team, but he is just more of that like pure scoring guard. He's not like a guy, hey, Marcus Sasser, go run the offense. Kind of a tenacious defender as well, but again, just not like go run the offense type of guy. And then De La Rey, I feel like he does have some versatility. He could play on or off the ball. I don't know if he's like a true lead guard. Maybe he'll take away some ball handling duties, but I do think just looking at this Mavericks roster, there is a lot of opportunity to continue to see Cooper Flag at the point guard position, and at the very least, I think that's super intriguing. And yeah, I definitely agree in terms of like their offseason approach. I think it signals that hey, maybe they're a little bit open and curious to see how this goes. And I mean, like we said before, Kyrie being there is going to be a big difference maker, regardless of him taking on any sort of point guard roles. I feel like just having a guy in Kyrie there will just benefit him so much, and it will make his life so much easier. Um, I do want to ask Dereck Lively is a guy that we haven't focused on. So yeah, what are your expectations for Lively? He was really injury riddled last season. He had that incredible 2024 finals run, but yeah, are you expecting sort of a bounce back season, and what can we expect to see from him this year?
Yeah, so it's all going to be about him staying on the court. I mean, because it's year four now, and he's played less than 100 games. Like, if he can stay healthy, I think that he's going to be tremendous. But he has to prove that. Like playing less than 50 games combined, I'm pretty sure over the last two seasons, like that's not good enough, especially if you want to earn a new contract with Dallas. So I think the number one thing is just him staying healthy, and if he can do that, then maybe he'll get another contract with Dallas. And like he needs to cement himself as the team's long-term starter at center. Like that's exactly what it needs to be because that's what he was drafted to be. I mean, he was the starter during, I think it was Gafford actually that was the starter, but Lively the second was kind of the, like, he was the best center on the team during that finals run. So that's certainly what they need to see out of him. And he just has to stay on the court. And if he can stay on the court, I think it's going to be a great season for him because he's great when he's on the court and he's so impactful. The stats sheet does not show how impactful he is, but if he can't stay on the court, then who knows if he's going to be a long-term piece of the team's core.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's kind of a make or break season in that regard, just from like a pure health standpoint. But yeah, when he's been on the court, he's been incredibly impactful. That 24 finals run really sticks in my mind, and I feel like sticks in everyone's mind because that he was absolutely sensational. Another one of those guys, just like that rim runner, rim protector type of guy. I think he does have like elite rim protection upside. So yeah, I think he has a ton of potential. It's just about staying on the court. And then like the other kind of interesting thing with Lively is I feel like he has solid feel as a playmaker. He's not like an offensive hub or anything, but like as a short role playmaker, I feel like there is some untapped potential there that maybe a new coaching staff could unlock. And then I don't think he's going to be spacing the floor a whole lot, but he did show at least some flashes of like nice shooting touch, which I think will benefit him outside of just that elite rim runner, rim protector mold. So I think he could have a really big year. He's still super young, but yeah, I mean it's really about staying healthy, and I do think like long term he is viewed currently as the center option, but who knows, things can change. Maybe they see Mraz as a true center instead of like a combo 4 or 5. So super interesting season for him. Outside of Lively, are there any other players you feel like we haven't touched on that could be really important to this Mavericks team?
Hmm. It's a good question. I think that Max Christie will at least be the starter there at the two. Who knows? Risacher could steal that spot. I think that there's a potential that they want Risacher in that starting five. But Max Christie needs to earn a new contract with Dallas too. Like that's something that's really important. He just wrapped up his first full season with the team. Yeah, so I think that Max Christie, he's someone to keep an eye on as well. Incredible shooter, and Kyrie is going to make his life so much easier too. So maybe a big jump from Christie is something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely makes a lot of sense. Still fairly young. He was kind of considered that like throw-in of the Luka trade, but still a very impactful player, and I think that makes a lot of sense projecting him to be that starting two guard, and he does bring that shooting that this team desperately needs. He can bring a little bit of self-creation. He has showed flashes in that regard. So yeah, I think he's going to be a really important player for this team. The other guy that I'd shout out is Najee Marshall, who's just like such an awesome role player. Super intense, really good defender, pretty underrated finisher, some playmaking chops. Not a great shooter, but overall just a nice glue guy and nice. I don't think he's like a super long term piece or anything, but a really nice fit next to Cooper for now, and I think he's gonna have a pretty impactful season. And yeah, just a role player that I would say I'm a fan of.
Yeah, his floater might be one of the best in the NBA. Like it's so unorthodox. Like when he gets into the paint, like it's almost a bucket every single time. Like he just has a knack for making tough shots in the paint, even with tight defense, even with defense all over him through contact. Like he just loves getting to the rim, and he really has an underrated handle because like before he came to the Mavs, I feel like some people kind of called him a 3-and-D wing, but that was never really the case. Like he's a guy who can play point guard when you need. Like he makes good decisions in transition. He can throw lobs. Like he's a really smart player. Like his handle and the way he gets to his spots, it doesn't look smooth like a player like Kyrie Irving or like Sasser or one of those guys who just has a real smooth handle and can get to their spots and make tough shots. But Najee can get to his spots too whenever he wants. It's just not going to look pretty, and he's going to make tough shots in the lane. So he should have another great year, and he's been really underappreciated the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, most definitely. I think he's just an exceptional role player and a guy that I think every team would want a Najee Marshall on their team. I feel like maybe he is a long term piece just because complementary players are so important for championship teams, and he brings a lot of value. Not a perfect comparison, but kind of like a Josh Hart, just like super gritty. I think his finishing is actually a little bit better, but like just super tough. Great defender. The floater game, like you said, the finishing, the handling, it's all really fun. So excited to watch and are excited for watching Marshall again this season. But yeah, I think moving ahead, maybe this you already sort of spoiled it with Max Christie, but who are you stamping as sort of your breakout player for this team? The guy that you think is going to take the next step and maybe have an unexpected impact?
Hmm. Okay. I'm gonna go. You can't really say he's taking a jump because he's a rookie, but I think De La Rey is going to have a real chance to carve out a real role. Just because, like we said, they didn't really add that many ball handlers. Kyrie is going to carry a big load. Of course, Cooper Flagg's going to carry a big load, but I think De La Rey could play real minutes as a rookie. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to look super pretty, but like I think there's a chance that he can prove himself as one of the best passers on the team. Like he will be connecting with guys like Gafford, Lively, Morris Johnson Jr. in transition. Like you saw in summer league, like he's coming in transition and he puts the ball between his legs, no look, and Morris Johnson Jr. catches it and dunks it. Like he is always looking for his teammates. Like, and maybe he does need to be a little bit more assertive. That's a problem that Ryan Memhard ran into last season, and De La Rey is going to have to add some self creation if he wants to really develop into a high end guard. But I think De La Rey is a guy to keep an eye on because they traded up to get him for a reason, and I think that he could have a real impact.
Yeah, I think that's a fun one. We talked about him earlier in the show, but yeah, I feel like most people might be glossing over him a little bit just because he was a late first round pick. It's like, oh, late first round pick, whatever. But he has a huge opportunity in front of him. In terms of just like how many open minutes there are. He looked really good in summer league. The skill level is just at a super high level. His playmaking, his poise. He's not a perfect player by any means, but I do think he's a really nice fit, especially just with his size, his playmaking. He can play off the ball a little bit. So yeah, super intriguing piece for this team long term. So yeah, I definitely like that show. I'll go with Lively. I mean, we already talked about him, but I'll bank on a break or a bounce back season, I guess, from Lively. I don't know if it's like gonna be a full breakout where he takes like a massive statistical leap, but I do think we could see a leap in production. As long as it's on the court, I think he's gonna be really good, and I'm banking on him to bounce back.
Yeah, if, well, like you said, if he's on the court, he is going to be super impactful. Like if he, it's all an if. Like that, it's such a big what if after the last two seasons. Even his rookie year, he was banged up a lot. He was healthy when it mattered most in the playoffs, but he suffered a lot of injuries, and that's not, especially with foot injuries on guys who are 7 foot plus. It's sometimes something that follows them their whole career. Fingers crossed that that's not something that happens to Lively, just because of how much the city of Dallas loves him, how much his teammates love him. But yeah, if he stays on the court this season, like there's going to be something to be excited about because he's one of the youngest players on the team, and he's a guy who has a chance to be a part of this, the foundation.
Yeah, most definitely. Looking forward to seeing him back on the court, and yeah, I'm gonna bank on the bounce back season. Obviously risky with some of the lower body injuries, and that he's a 7 footer, but yeah, I think he'll bounce back and super exciting player. I think we can wrap it up here with just overall where do the Mavericks stack up in the West? Do you see them making a jump, maybe competing for the playoffs in that play and outside of it? Generally, where do you see them? And then over under 35 and a half wins.
Okay, yeah, the range that I kind of have them in is just outside the play-in and the play-in. I really don't see them being a top six team if I had to guess. So I think for kind of their vision and what I think that they're going to prioritize, I kind of see them as a outside of the play, just outside the play-in to bottom half play-in team. That's kind of where I have them. And for over under, you said 35 and a half. I'm going
Yeah.
to take over. I'm going to take over there.
Yeah, no, I like that. I will say that 8 seed in the West is kind of open, so it wouldn't shock me. I'm probably not going to predict it, but it wouldn't shock me if the Mavericks make that jump and they snag that 8 seed just because it is a little bit open, in my opinion. I feel pretty good about the top seven, so I wouldn't rule it out. I could see them as a playing team, probably like losing in that playing game, though, so probably like 9-10 range. But I also could see a world where it's just like we're going to really just focus on development. Cooper Flagg's still in year two, and they're going to be like that 11-12 seed. I think the West is just like a little bit less deep, so I do feel like there is an opportunity for the Mavericks to make some sort of jump. And yeah, overall, I do like the over 35 and a half. I feel like that's a bit of a low number. I feel like this team will be like high 30s, maybe low 40s. So I do see them taking a jump in that department, and I definitely like the over there.
Yeah, I'm thinking after what happened last year, losing 56 games, like that the city just needs a little something to be excited about. And I think that Kyrie Irving's return is just going to be, it's it's going to be huge for them. And I think they got significantly better from where they ended last season to now. So I think that's a good number. I kind of had to think about it for a second, but I had to take the over.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to be excited about with this Mavericks team, even if they're not going to be an incredibly elite team or anything this season, but just with Cooper Flagg and then Kyrie coming back, even guys like Lively coming back, two first rounders, I think there's a lot to be excited about. At the very least, they're going to be a super entertaining league pass team. And yeah, I mean, Cooper Flagg is clearly on a superstar trajectory, so at bare minimum, that's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, excited for this Maverick season. But yeah, if you guys want to keep up with Mavericks coverage, definitely make sure to go check out Noah's work, and I'll let you plug your work, tell our listeners where they can find you at.
Absolutely, yeah. So my personal Twitter is at Noah Weber00, and that's on my tag right there. It's Noah Noah Weber Weber 00, and that's where I post my reporter coverage. I have boots in the ground at every single Dallas Mavericks home game, press conference, practice, whatever that may be. That's where I'm plugged in, and that's where I've been working for the past few seasons. And you can read my written content over at thesmokingcuban.com.
Absolutely. I appreciate you hopping on the show, Noah. We'll have to do it again, talk some Mavericks.
Absolutely, let's do it, man. It was fun.